So let's do this. Let's do yet again another Transformers Slag podcast Patreon listener question. Once again, if you want to be part of the Transformers Slag podcast, support the Patreon, let us know that we're doing a decent job, giving you the daily news, the daily injection of the robots in disguise. Patreon.com/Protoman. It's in the description. It's in the pinned comment below. So we got some cool stuff if you join the Patreon. Get your name in the end credit scroll at the end of every segment moving forward. You get access to the Transformer Slag Discord. It is an awesome Discord. So many cool stuff going on. Posted a whole bunch of cool images from the past. You get also access to the deals section, the rare lore section, all the cool stuff, all the cool downloads, all in our Discord. And depending on what tier you are, you might also get a little something in the mail. I actually have to ship out a welcoming gift box to one of my high tier patrons of the podcast. David, your stuff's in the mail. And of course, the Patreon listener question. Once again, we have an amazing Patreon listener question. This one comes from Bailey. And Bailey wants to know, hey Proto, I was thinking for a listener question that I wanted to ask you. The question being, do you think that Hasbro will ever reissue any more Japanese market only figures? Specifically, do you think we'll even get reissues of something like the animated Japanese Blackout or the Asian market Dark of the Moon Q? So, this is a question I believe that actually was posed to John Warden at New York Toy Fair back in 2019. Now, granted, John is no longer the senior design manager of the Transformer brand, but back then, in 2019, before the world went on its head, John was asked that question, and he said that he was pretty much interested in revisiting doing more stuff with that. And at the time, I mean, all we were really pretty much basing that on was the Dino cassettes were like the big thing, the big, rare, odd thing from the past of Transformers getting a modern reissue. Everything really up to that point, you know, and I'm not talking about, like, let's say the book box stuff from the early 2000s with Stepper and everything, but pretty much most stuff was Generation 1 retail Western releases, and nothing was really outside of that box. Yeah, you got your God Ginrai from the God Bomber and the Apex Armor Optimus Prime. Once in a while they'd throw us a bone. But, I mean, it's been 20 years since that line has started in the West, and hasn't been much that has been of the Japanese stuff. So he showed interest of it, and then the question came up again at the Hasbro Pulse Fan Fest that we got just 2 weeks ago, April 9th, 2021, where the question was, would we be seeing any Japanese exclusive characters for our Classics Generations kind of style and line? And Lenny Penzica, that's the current senior design manager of Transformers that replaced John Warden, he said something along the lines of, now that the chains are off, and I'm using air quotes here, now that the chains are off for the War for Cybertron trilogy, they could do all kinds of characters of any walks of life. And what that really means in relation to your question is that, yeah, we'll probably get some of those off-the-wall obscure characters, maybe Dino King, maybe, you know, I don't know, Landcross, maybe some Master Force characters, maybe some Transformer Zone characters. But what that means in the domino effect of things is if you make Diatlas and you make a character, a toy of him in the Classics line, Generations, whatever the next trilogy will be, what that will be essentially is a trademark. And then sooner or later, maybe they could use that trademark again for a reissue. So it kind of, you know, one leads to the other in another way too. Keep that in mind. So that's something to consider. In relation also to your question where you mentioned, like, let's say, Animated Blackout or Q. In the case of Q, because Q was one of these funny things where it was supposed to come out in late 2011, and retailers were just really not happy with the sales of Dark of the Moon. Dark of the Moon, toy-wise, did not do well, which is a shame because, like, you know, Revenge of the Fallen, and in between that with the Transformer 2010 stuff, which was like Reveal the Shield and Hunt for the Decepticons, all that stuff was selling gangbusters. But like 2011 was like the Games to Life, Skylanders, Amiibo was going to be on the horizon. I guess kids were looking elsewhere. The iPad was the hot product for kids too at the time. So Transformers really took a hit, and Dark of the Moon it was pretty much the beginning of the end for movie toy lines being these blockbuster toy sales. And Q was on the chopping block, unfortunately, and his figure didn't make it to Western retail. It did actually show up in Asian market retail and stuff like that, and that was really it. I think there was also, like, it showed up in Australia and some liquidator places in Canada, like toy liquidator places. I personally have never seen it, but I know some of my Toronto guys did find them in some of their toy liquidator places. So that being said, that figure had a very weird history, but what I honestly feel is I don't think Hasbro will reissue that. I think they'll just skip over that and we'll get a studio series. That'll be it. We'll like our next Q figure, if they're going to call him Q instead of Wheeljack, I almost feel like they'll just go with Wheeljack maybe. It's easier for the trademark, but that's a whole other problem with that character is what name is he? But I feel like they'll probably just go with a studio series. I don't think they'll do. But the Blackout, you never know with the Blackout. I mean, Breakdown is almost like a parallel to Blackout, like Transformers Prime Breakdown. We got this Transformer Prime Breakdown. We got the reissue. Literally just talked about it just a few days ago. And it was a Hasbro Pulse exclusive reissue of an old toy that, because it was a Japanese market exclusive, went for good money. Kind of the same story here with the animated Blackout, where it's a Japan-only exclusive figure that potentially could have came out here in the Western market. It just never did. And it became one of these situations where, I could see with an anniversary of animated coming up or something, if they want to have fun and do something, they could reissue that. But it really has to be, circumstantial, if anything else. Because, I know personally, and I've told this story on the podcast in the past, where if BotCon would have continued, I would have loved to find a place for that animated Breakdown mold as some kind of Western release in a box set. Of course, it wouldn't be animated Breakdown, but that mold retooled into another character, whether it be Grindor or Whirl, something along those lines. But of course, we never got to that point, unfortunately. So, I think we're going to get something. I really do, but I think it's going to be kind of like a drip drop kind of thing in a lot of ways. I feel that, like, Lenny Penzica's answer, if anything, kind of tells us, like, well, chances are we'll probably, like, to give an example, this isn't set in stone, but, like, they'll get a Star Saber first, or they'll get, I don't know, Minerva or Metal Hawk or whoever, and then maybe, if the market is there for it, because keep in mind, all these reissues have been Walmart exclusives, so it really has to do if Walmart approves it too. If you show Walmart a Pretender Shell Metal Hawk, yeah, that's hype and amazing for us collectors that never were able to get that expensive Pretender Shell. I really want people to get that because I own one, and I think it's incredible. It's the only die-cast Pretender character, so that's a big deal. But it's a matter if Walmart looks at it and goes, nah, we don't like this, then it's kind of like back to the drawing board in a lot of ways. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it's going to go about, but I feel that the chicken is going to come before the egg, in the sense that we're going to get some kind of Generations character first. That'll line up the trademark, and then the trademark will lead to the potential of a reissue afterwards, as opposed to them making a trademark exclusively just for a reissue. But we got those were some weird trademark names for those Dino cassettes, so who knows? But then again, that was the John Warden era. Now it's the Lenny era. We're going to see how Lenny handles things and the stuff that he wants to do with the brand, and hopefully we'll get something like that. Again, me personally, I have like 99% of those Japanese exclusive stuff, so it's not even a personal thing. It's more just me going like, I would love that to exist, even if it would actually damage the value of my figures, but I don't care about that. It's just I would love it to exist, because then it gives people other opportunities to own it themselves. The fact that people can't own and enjoy, the Brainmasters, Road Caesar, is a shame, because that gimmick is so cool. And they're so expensive. A complete Road Caesar mint in box is like $900, and it sucks because there's very few affordable ways to get those characters unless they're missing stuff, or you get the weird United Kingdom versions or something like there's only so many ways you could go about it. maybe a bootleg. I think there's a bootleg or two of those guys kicking around also. But the point is that it's always would be cool for people to enjoy those characters and those old gimmicks. You know, there's a certain limited art that exists with some of those old G1 toys that people could really appreciate when they go back and mess with them. And I mean, it's that you know, the limitations of engineering, but still able to have so much character within the plastic confines. And either way, it's something that I hope it does happen. Bailey, trust me, I hope it does happen, because there's so much stuff that has never been brought over to the West that could be potentially done. Or even like easy stuff, you know, like even doing Japanese repaints of characters. Like, you know, if they do a reissue of Metroplex, you could do a Metro Titan of the reissue of the old G1 1986 toy. And, you know, it's an easy way for Hasbro to have that Metroplex trademark used again without having to do a Titan, although people would hate it if that was the case. But it is another example, you know, throw it back to the old Autobot City. You know, I don't know how much that thing would cost in retail today. It would probably be $100 probably, but I don't know if Devastator was in those high numbers, and he's a lot less plastic than Metroplex. I don't know. I'm talking the G1 version here. Either way, I think it'll happen. I really do. I really, really do. I just think that it's more a matter of they need to line up those trademarks first, and then they'll do something. In the case of, like you said, in the case of Q, I think we're going to see a studio series. I don't think they'll reissue the old Dark of the Moon figure. And in the case of Blackout, I think we're going to need like an anniversary. Again, we're gonna need a Transformers Prime breakdown kind of scenario to make that happen, because otherwise it would be kind of out of left field. But luckily, in the case of Blackout, that trademark's freshly kicking around, so for sure they'll find a way to somehow use it again, and potentially an animated Blackout could be one of them, for sure. And oddly enough, I think the animated Blackout, when it was planned for the Western market, had a very different paint scheme than the one that was even released in Japan, which is mostly the case with a lot of the Japanese animated toys. They all had slightly different paint schemes, or chromier kind of metallic-looking paint schemes. But so we might get something even different than what Japan got. Might even be better when you really think about it. But either way, hope that answers your question. I'm curious in a lot of ways. And again, once again, I pose the question to the audience. If there was a Japanese exclusive figure across everything, not just Generation 1, but even like going into Unicron Trilogy stuff, Generation 2, because there was a little Japanese exclusive stuff everywhere, who would you like to see get reissued? You have the pen. You can make that call. Who would you like to see reissued? And maybe even try to be logical about it. Does that trademark exist? Could it be done? You know, is it something that would make sense in retail? You know, add that business acumen to it, and see if it would work out. But again, thank you for the listener question, Bailey. If you want to be a patron just like Bailey, patreon.com/Protoman. Join the Transformer Slag Patreon and come rock out with us.